main differences is just in the personalities of the players. In that, if you normally are coaching a guys team, you have a lot of people who played sports previously. So I found over the course of time that the way you have to coach guys is different than the way you would coach women. In that, uh, like you have to motivate and do things that aren't really my strong point. Versus with the women's game is that you don't necessarily have to. Where the way you motivate is different than the way you would for guys teams. So with guys, it's normally about volume and teaching. Versus women, you don't necessarily have to yell. You just need to instruct and talk to each individually with the individual kind of communication style is what I found has worked well. The other main differences is your perspective of looking at a game is different for guys versus girls in that men are naturally more, not necessarily more athletic, but the game is faster based on the overall general athleticism of men versus women is different. The size of the players are different in that you just have to look at it differently. Is that most of the time women's teams have more skill level, they play better basics versus guys who a lot of time will depend on athleticism to get them through. Well, actually, before I had ever done anything with the guys here at Ball State, I was always just doing the women.
Okay.
And then when their coach, they had it, at that point in time, they left or they had gone away, and they asked if I wanted to step in. So I tried it out, and I didn't really. It was hard to do because even though I had set expectations up front, guys had different expectations, or they were wondering like why. And I said I'm here to help you get ready to play in your games on the weekends. Versus I'm not going to be able to travel to any of your games because the women's was the first priority for me. And I did it, and I would not want to be a head coach for a men's rugby team, but I would be an assistant because I don't want to have to lead that style. It's a different leadership style you have to have and communication. I don't really want to do that now that I've been coaching exclusively women's rugby for almost 12 years. Because a lot of times, pretty much my main motivation when I got started is kind of still carries through to today, is that to find a coach for a men's team is relatively easy in that you'll have lots of people who have probably had experience with rugby, maybe even coaching too, who would be willing to take on and coach a men's team versus a women's team where there's not as necessarily as much experience or people who are willing to devote the time who might be good at it, but they would never give it a shot because for some guys they classify women's rugby as not the same. I've never been that way. I mean, I was around rugby since I've been in high school. I watched it all through college, men's and women's, so I found it's enjoyable. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. It's rewarding in that my goal is to teach people to play, so then once they graduate and they want to play further on, they'll have a good base to be able to go on for them. If they don't decide to play after college, then they got to enjoy the experience of learning how to play the sport, even if they don't take it further. And what I found too is that players who want to coach, or who don't even know that they want to coach, but then when they get out of college and they get in a situation, well, yeah, I'm like, hey, I've played rugby before, and they could be like, hey, yeah, I'd step in and I help coach or whatever. And so, I mean, that's kind of what I get out of it. Giving people who want the opportunity to practice or be leaders, rugby gives them a chance to do that either on the field or off. People who don't care or are there just to have fun, there's nothing wrong with that too. There's nothing wrong with people who are, I'm here for the sport, not necessarily the social atmosphere. I mean, it covers all the ranges. So no, but I've never run into that issue because most of I know anybody involved in rugby in Indiana, I know. People involved in rugby in the Midwest, I know. If I don't know them or haven't met them, I've known something about the teams or know somebody that's around. Is that in general, I'm respected by other people no matter, because to coach, doesn't matter if you're a coach women's or men's. If you're a good coach, you're a good coach. If you understand how the game works and working through that, is that I've never been, I guess, looked down upon because I coach in the women's game versus the men. And if somebody did, it probably is not somebody that's a coach. It's probably somebody that's just a player or a spectator who hasn't put in the time to understand what coaching is. Because there's lots of people who try and coach and fail, or who don't understand the commitment that you have to actually put in to actually do it and be successful. So, and if they didn't respect and most of the people I know respect my opinion in regards to the game itself, just because I've been around a long time. So it'd be 24 years this year. No,
No.
no. I could care less about other people's opinions or standards or outside viewpoints. My goal at the end of the day is, and the way I look at it is, was it a successful season? Did we get better all season long? Did individual players get better and they can see their own